Motorhead Garage, presented by NHOU Protective Coatings, is brought to you by RockAuto.com. All the parts your car will ever need. BrothersTrucks.com, your #1 source for 1947 to 87 Chevy and GMC truck restoration. Magic Creeper, the most versatile creeper ever. Oil Undercoating, the official oil-based rust prevention system. And by Schaefer Oil, putting engines first.
This is Motorhead Garage, presented by NHOU Protective Coatings, and this product won the best new product at SEMA in 2010 when it was invented. It is still the best today. It's a throttle controller called Sprint Booster. Norman, most great products solve a problem. What was the problem that Sprint Booster solved?
Well, in the late 90s, drive-by-wire became more usable in vehicles. Where we used to start with cable, we had that connection at the pedal to the carburetor or the throttle body. They started doing away with that and everything was electronic. Well, in doing so, it actually became very delayed. You have a potentiometer built into the pedal assembly. It's a low voltage, it sends a slow voltage to the ECU, and then what happens is that the throttle body moves at a very delayed rate. No matter how fast and how hard you press the gas, the throttle body is disconnected from the user.
And so how did you solve the problem with Sprint Booster?
Well, Sprint Booster actually plugs into the pedal assembly, where it's a simple device. It takes about 5 minutes to install on most. It has a controller on the side, and with this you can actually turn that slow throttle blade into a much more linear movement, where you can see the blade moving at a much faster rate, and all the way up to more of a race movement where you have a 1-to-1 ratio where you still have 0 to 100% throttle travel, but when you want it.
And there's a lot of products out there that are imitators, and I've heard that you're missing some of the throttle control. You don't have full control of it.
Yeah, Sprint Boosters, the different level in a Sprint Booster actually determines the driver's use. So you have a manual and automatic mode, which has different tip-in values. Tip-in is the initial throttle blade movement in correlation to the pedal movement. So when you first hit the gas, either it's going to be extremely fast or a little bit more ramped into that speed.
How many different settings are there on the Sprint Booster?
Sprint Booster has 9 different levels in each setting. So in green mode, you have 9 levels, 1 through 9. Now it's kind of like your stereo.
And green would be like stock, if this is more of a street version.
Well, yeah, it's a street version. So the tip-in value is a little bit softer, but you still get that ramp. And I always compare it to a stereo because, a stereo has maybe 1 to 50, right? So if you had a car stereo and let's say it went to 1 to 50, 50 doesn't necessarily sound good. And with Sprint Booster installed, just because it has level 9 doesn't mean that it's going to be right for that driver.
Gotcha. And now the race mode?
Wow. Race mode is for the enthusiast that really just wants to feel that raw power of the vehicle. It doesn't matter if you have 1,000 horsepower, if you don't have access to it, it's pointless. So if you're putting this in at, let's say, a Hellcat, you have a complete control in race mode. From 0 to 100% throttle, you don't lose anything, you gain everything.
And now there's some extra features in there, not just about performance.
Yes, Sprint Booster also has a valet mode and it has a pedal lock mode. Pedal lock is a version of an anti-theft, and you'll put a code in there and it prevents anyone from driving your vehicle if you don't want them to.
It's drive-by-wire, so it's just an on-off switch.
It's an on-off switch. In valet mode, you can pull back the power. If you have an 800 horsepower car and you don't want your son hot dogging it, you're going to put it down to maybe 300 horsepower that's accessible to him.
If only Ferris Bueller had one of these years ago.
He would have still gotten in trouble.
No doubt about it. So a lot of folks are asking, how safe is this? Anytime you plug something in, especially when it comes to electronics, you end up with issues with voiding the warranty or throwing a code or something like that.
That's what makes Sprint Booster amazing. Sprint Booster talks to the ECU in the language that the ECU was designed to listen to from the factory. The factory parameters never get changed. The ECU that you have in your car does not get changed. If the ECU allowed it, Sprint Booster talks to it in that language and says, do this, and the ECU allows it.
Perfect. It's a simple design. What actually comes in the box?
Well, Sprint Booster box, when you first open it, you'll see that it has the controller inside of it along with all your manuals. The controller itself is pretty basic. It's about the size of your thumb. Once you actually have it set up in a level preset, you can actually unplug the controller from the unit and it still has that memory that you last left it at.
How many different vehicles can use the Sprint Booster?
Sprint Booster has over 1,200 applications right now, ranging anywhere from a diesel to gas and EV. Diesels, where they don't have a throttle body, they still have the pedal assembly. So when you actually plug a sprint booster into a diesel application, it almost acts like a programmer without actually reprogramming anything.
Very cool. And what about EVs then? How's it work there?
EVs, the same issue, where we're playing around with all electric vehicles right now. We know the hybrids work amazingly well, and right now we have some test vehicles out there with an EV unit, and it works very well too.
You're going to love the throttle response when you install a Sprint Booster. You can find them at sprintboosterusa.com. And you can find more Motorhead Garage presented by NHOU Protective Coatings when we come back. Stay tuned.